Once upon a time, black people didn't depend on the government to fight their battles.
And we were, and as blacks, we were successful because we were following the foundation of our actions was based upon what the founders of this nation did, and it is faith, family, self-determination. That black America was never defined by oppression or by slavery or by Jim Crow.
Jim Crow 2.0. Joe Biden's favorite talking point.
That we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
And your son make Rick James look like baby Jesus. I ain't never heard of Rick James smoking no Parmesan cheese.
But people today, in the name of social justice for blacks, have really hijacked that rich legacy of civil rights and are using America's birth defect of slavery as a bludgeon against the country.
To label all white conservatives descendants of slave masters.
Columnist Bill Raspberry really outlined the problem back in '97. He said, find me a black child with ambition, confidence, determination, and I'll show you the child's future success. Find me a white child without ambition, without confidence, without determination, I'll show you that child's future failure.
Well, what if you can find 2 in 1?
How come I don't get no big chair?
I'm talking to Howard. What's your name?
Stern, Nipsey.
I'm just asking for a friend.
Opportunities given to him will not spell success, and opportunities denied to the black boy will not cause him to fail.
So should he take off the black or should he leave it on?
So now, you know,
I like when you rhyme. I like when you rhyme, Nipsey. Do that for me.
you look like Nipsey. Nipsey Russell.
And not Nipsey Hussle, but at least you don't look like a racist.
We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War.
Like Mr. Race Bader himself.
Let me ask you a couple questions. You think judicial activism, Doctor, has hurt blacks?
Yeah, especially nowadays with Black Lives Matter.
Judicial activism of eliminating restrictive covenants in deeds, eliminating segregation in schools, one man, one vote, literacy test. Do you consider those judicially active?
No, but I consider your ass judicial racist.
21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting.
Like you, pretending like you care for black people voting rights, like you're an activist.
Well, as regards restrictive covenants, I can see no evidence that they did anything other than make some people feel good because it was symbolic.
Like Democrats trying to be symbolic to black people voting rights.
I've laid out the facts for weeks. Republican state legislatures across the country are engaged in the most sweeping voter suppression in 80 years.
Back when the Democratic Party was oppressing black people openly.
Capitalizing on and catalyzed by Donald Trump's big lie.
And your big truth. Ain't that a bitch?
These state governments are making it harder for younger, poorer, urban, and non-white Americans to vote.
So I guess it makes it easy for broke-ass white people to vote. Next! Joe Biden and the Democrats been making it hard for black people to do shit for years, even with school busing.
As regards desegregation of the school system, that should have been done long before and on a much more sound basis. I've gone into this at great length in previous writings.
So you not about to pull no Clarence Thomas shit on me?
But are
The
they?
problem with, no.
Hold it now. You know, ain't no cracker gonna take over now.
You see, the problem is not whether you believe that school desegregation should have ended. I believe it should have ended long before. George Bork believes it should have ended long before. What he and what I have objected to are the principles used in that decision, because those principles take on a life of their own.
So does the hair that grows on my baby mama chest.
And they come back to haunt you in other areas. Obviously, this old phrase, the hard cases make bad law, derived from that fact.
And hard heads make a soft ass too.
You dream up a principle to reach this result, and then the principle has a life of its own.
So the principle of desegregating the schools.
No, that wasn't the principle.
Now, the one thing about it already, see, you got a nigga working for you. You got a nigga working for you, but you don't run this nigga here, so cracker, you shut up.
The principle was the reason that they picked for it was.
Well, that's all I'm saying. Okay, the reasons they picked
Yes.
Desegregating the schools, you and Judge Bork agree were the wrong principles, and they should have not. So the court shouldn't have done that.
No, the court should have done it.
It's like talking rocket scientist to a crackhead, or talking oil to Hunter Biden.
Oh, okay.
Both of us have said the court should have done it.
I see.
And in my case, and I think in his case, the court should have done it a lot sooner.
How?
They should have.
What you mean, how, you stupid son of a bitch? Joe Biden, I think he's kind of smarter than you.
They should have ruled that it wasn't equal protection of the law, because nobody in his right mind believes that there was equal protection of the law in the Jim Crow era of these school systems.
I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying.
Now this is a good and crazy cracker, so I'm gonna let him talk, but I want all the niggas at home to let this cracker educate you how ignorant crackers can do, while I
Where's the
educate
cap?
crackers how intelligent niggas can. Go ahead and rap, nigga.
Yes.
Now, when they desegregated the D.C. schools, it's clear the 14th Amendment does not apply. Everyone agrees that the 14th Amendment does not apply to the District of Columbia. How would they have done it in the District of Columbia? Should they have just let it stand in the District of Columbia? Segregation?
I know that a cracker looks at all niggas as one. You understand?
Especially Joe Biden. He's been doing it for years.
No, in fact, Senator, it's interesting that you say that, because I've gotten the first thing I ever wrote in on a public issue was in November 13th, 1950, in the Washington Star, in which I argued for the desegregation of the D.C. school system. So that
On what principle?
Hold it now. You know, ain't no cracker gonna take over now.
You got crackers and white people just like you got black people. You got crackers and white people just like you got niggas and black people. And both niggas and crackers is ignorant. And Joe Biden is a cracker.
I had not studied nearly as much then as I have 37 years later. And so I hadn't worked it out. Nor do I think that I would want to work it out on the run in front of a large group of lawyers at this very moment in the time that's available.
Joe Biden, who in the fuck do you think you're talking to? Next!
Well, how about literacy test? Was it judicial?
I see no reason why people shouldn't be literate in order to vote.
Particularly people of color. This effort to go back to Jim Crow is absolutely shameful. And I think the most serious anti-democratic actions since Donald Trump left office.
So both Donald Trump impeachments wasn't anti-democratic. Next! You don't need to know how to read no more to vote.
The question is, if you have a black who comes in with his degree from Harvard, and the man behind the desk says, no, you're not literate, you can't vote.
We might have a problem.
Then this is what bothers me. People are talking about how judges should be sensitive to this particular group or that particular group. And if that means anything, if it means he's applying the law differently, that's precisely how blacks were held down for generations in the South.
And how white people are being held back now with CRT. But that was yesterday's skit.
So
By
literacy
applying the law differently.
So literacy test, as long as they were equally applied, are all right.
Sure.
So I thought you thought.
Hold it now. You know, ain't no cracker gonna take over now.
Joe Biden, who in the fuck do you think you're talking to? Next!
Chuck Swindoll wrote about something paralleling what Raspberry said. He said, I am convinced that life is 10% of what happens to me and 90% how I react to it.
You only oppress if they make you believe you oppressed.
We are in charge of our attitude. It is more important than the past, than education, than circumstances, than failure, than success, than any other thing that people would say or do about us.
But liberals got black people convinced self-belief is worthless.
The cracker looks at all niggas as one. You understand? You look at Robin as a nigga like you look at me as a nigga. Now, you might take a little step, another dimension, and try to jive it up.
In other words, it is character that it represents the principal means by which people excel and move from poverty to prosperity.
Without the government's help.
But all crackers and all niggas have racism in them, including me.
And not excluding Joe Biden.
I gather from your comments about MIT and Harvard that you don't think there's enough blacks out there who are qualified to fill the number of vacancies allotted for them in those schools. Is that right?
No, once again, your dumb ass is wrong.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, the word qualifies really is misleading.
Well,
Hold it now. You know, ain't no cracker gonna take over now.
The question is whether or not they are like the other students at Harvard and MIT.
They're for their brains and not their color.
well, okay. Oh, so there's not.
So they may be perfectly qualified. This same student might go through, God help us, I hope there's nobody here from Illinois, Illinois Institute of Technology and do well. But there's no reason why he should fail at MIT. There's no prestige in flunking out of the Ivy League.
When they can graduate with honors at Compton College.
I got it. So, but my point is, you believe there are not enough black women and men out there that are the same as white women and men to be able to go through Harvard and MIT.
If there were, it would mean that the whole history of oppression had done no harm whatever.
You stupid son of a bitch.
Well, so the answer is you don't think there are. I just want to figure out what you're saying.
It's not a question of what I think, it's a factual matter.
So factually, you're saying factually there are not enough.
Factually, this study's already been done by Klitgard at Harvard, and the figures are all there. Anyone can look them up.
Google it, or back then, floppy disk it.
Okay, no, I just want to hear from you. I want to know what you're thinking.
Well, nigga, I told you, but it's too big for your little ass brain.
Now, are you part of what they call the law and economics school? You know that? Would you consider yourself part of that school?
Wait a minute, nigga. Is you part of the KKK? Do you consider yourself a Klan member?
There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad school. I just wanted to know where you are.
When I sit down to write, Senator, I don't ask what my label. I don't check my identification tag to see what I am.
Like you don't need to wear a sheet over your head, Joe Biden, for us to know that your ass is from the Klan.
But I did. One of my books did win a prize as the best book in law and economics in 1980.
And what book did you write? Or better yet, what book did you ever read?
Yeah, no, but I mean, there's almost a term of art out there called the School of Law and Economics.
Yes.
And are you part of that school intellectually? That's all I'm trying to get.
I'm very much interested in the application of economic principles in the law and vice versa.
Is that good enough for you? Next! Unless you got somebody else smarter than this as a Democrat to ask questions.
There's nothing that I think it was James Baldwin said, when white people learn to love other white people, there won't be a black problem.
Because if white people came together, they wouldn't be concerned about who hate niggas more.
So we all got a little bit of racism in us. So you could be raised up in New York and heard them talk about niggas, and I was raised up in Washington, heard them talk about crackers.
And my baby mama grew up in the jungle, and I talk about her. Next! White people need to get along.
Which means that whites are too willing to accept the charge that they are guilty of institutional racism.
White people stop feeling guilty or not guilty about loving or not loving black people.
And I think it's fueling a lot of the violence. If you say that white people are superior, you're saying that black people are inferior.
And that's not true. Just look at basketball, football, and car insurance commercials. That nigga just came and took Jared's job. Jared is unemployed right now.
The racial thing is not what you and I are about. We just like people. I know that you like people.
Are baby mamas that escape from the zoo considered people? Next!
While this broad assault against voting rights is not unprecedented, it's taking on a new and literally pernicious forms.
The rhetoric that is being used by Joe Biden, by Chuck Schumer, by other Democrats is consistently inflammatory. Indeed, one of the phrases that they like to use today is Jim Crow 2.0.
What we're seeing, and let's be clear about this, is Jim Crow 2.0.
Ironically and inadvertently, there's some truth to what they're saying.
It is? I didn't know that was possible.
Because we do have legislation pending before Congress that would indeed be Jim Crow 2.0.
We do? I didn't know that.
It's worth asking, what was Jim Crow 1.0? Jim Crow 1.0 were a series of racist laws that were written by Democrats.
For Democrats.
That were enforced by Democrats.
On black people.
Whose purpose was to prevent the voters from ever voting Democrats out of power.
To keep the party that freed the slaves out the White House. Republicans.
Jim Crow was offensive, it was racist, it was bigoted, it was wrong, and it was the Democratic Party who wrote, enforced, and implemented it.
The Democrats, not only the Jim Crow clients, they the Jim Crow president.
The only objective of the Corrupt Politicians Act is to keep Democrats in power for the next 100 years.
It will be a one-party rule.
How does it do that? The Corrupt Politicians Act would strike down every voter ID law in the country.
I'm gonna need to see some ID.
Whoa, man. I didn't realize you hated black people.
And you ain't black.
So?
80% of Americans support voter ID.
Asking for ID disproportionately prevents minorities from accessing alcohol.
I'm not racist, all right?
Whoa! This racist is asking for IDs. Yeah, racist.
I'm not racist! That's two kids in a trench coat!
60% of African Americans support voter ID.
Oh, so all black guys are just two kids in a trench coat.
This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle.
What would the Corrupt Politicians Act do? Repeal every one of those laws.
What's going on over here?
He wants me to show an ID to buy alcohol.
Oh, so you like being racist to children, huh?
Maybe we should ask him for his ID and see how he likes it.
Sir, let me see your ID.
My ID? But I'm white!
And mind you, this is while Democrats are saying we support the right to vote, so we're going to take away the decision made by the voters to enact voter ID laws.
Because black people don't have IDs. Next!
What else does the Corrupt Politicians Act do? 29 states have prohibited ballot harvesting.
Democrats got to hate that.
It's about all voters. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This is about Americans.
Ho, stop lying with your scripted words.
Our democracy is strongest when everyone participates.
We know that our democracy works best when everyone can participate fully.
And it is weaker. It is weaker. Our democracy as a nation is weaker when people are left out.
But we also know that voter suppression is alive and well. Old battles have become new again.
Senate Republicans have signed their names in the ledger of history alongside Donald Trump, the big lie, and voter suppression.
So all them Republicans gonna go down in liberal history as racist.
It's no longer just about who gets to vote or making it easier for eligible voters to vote. It's about who gets to count the vote.
And you know you can trust us counting the vote. We liberals, we wouldn't cheat.
Regardless of what may be happening in some states, there's no rationale for federal intervention. That is both ridiculous and awful.
Because if the Democrats control the federal government, they also control the way we vote.
Who gets to count whether or not your vote counted at all?
So we need to leave it in the hands of the federal government. Ain't that a bitch?
In fact, the Corrupt Politicians Act explicitly immunizes the state officials who would be registering illegal immigrants to vote. Now, when you register millions of illegal immigrants to vote, you are stealing the right to vote from American citizens.
One illegal vote cancels out one legal vote.
The Corrupt Politicians Act mandates that felons all across the country be allowed to vote.
From prison, here go your commissary sheet and your voting ballot.
That means your state legislature in your home doesn't have the ability to pass laws concerning voting without getting an unelected bureaucrat in the Department of Justice to sign off on it first.
And most likely, the Justice Department official will be liberal.
It's about moving from independent election administrators who work for the people to polarized state legislatures and partisan actors who work for political parties.
And that's any political party that ain't ours.
Mind you, this is after Joe Biden is nominated and Senate Democrats have confirmed extreme partisans to the Department of Justice. Kristen Clark, who is a left-wing radical activist.
That's a slave name!
Would be in charge of voting laws all across the country with the ability to stop any elected legislature from passing laws concerning voting.
Well, they need to unconfirm the bitch.
Ms. Clark, Martin Luther King famously said that he had a dream of the day when his children would be known by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Yeah, in track and field.
Well, maybe there's a misprint, but I'm sure you can clear it up for me. Dating back to your days when in school, when you seemed to argue that African Americans were genetically superior to Caucasians. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the NBA where niggas can run, shoot, and steal. Next! Was that racist?
Ms. Clark, in the fall of 2008, two members of the new Black Panther Party which is, of course, a violent hate group that focuses on racial violence, stood outside of a polling place in Philadelphia, dressed in military attire and brandishing a billy club.
That must have been scary for white people.
In January 2009, just a couple months later, the Department of Justice charged those same individuals and the new Black Panther Party itself with criminal voter intimidation.
That would have intimidated me, and I'm black.
But just a month after that, the then new acting head of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division dismissed nearly all the charges.
Like they dismissed all the Summer of Love charges.
Do you think the U.S. Department of Justice was wrong to prosecute those individuals who showed up at a polling place wielding a billy club?
Scaring the shit out of white people.
I believe that.
Damn what you believe in. I believe you and Joe got the same speech coach. Next.
Now, did you want the Department of Justice to drop a case?
I may have espoused that opinion publicly, but so did many people.
That's not what he asked.
I think there were many people who deemed that a weak case.
Did you communicate with anyone at the Department of Justice about that, advocating for them dropping it?
That's the question.
I did not engage in any advocacy around that case, if that's what you're asking, Senator.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
I did communicate with people regarding public information, publicly available information about the case.
That is what I'm asking.
There are a couple of Department of Justice officials who have testified under oath that while you were at the NAACP, you specifically asked Laura Coates, an attorney within the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, when the case would be dismissed. Is that accurate?
Lie, bitch, if you won't. Never mind. Next!
Ms. Clark, I want to read a non-exhaustive list of elements of the American society, elements that you have at one point or another described in the past as racist.
You got a racist top 10?
Police departments, federal agencies, Airbnb, election laws designed to combat fraud, the workplace, America's DNA, the Virginia Military Institute, the healthcare industry, federal courts, and the Department of Justice.
Just to name a few.
Now, you've worked for the Department of Justice and with the federal courts. Were those institutions racist when you worked there?
Or are they only racist now? You know what? Never mind. Next!
Senate Bill 7, so-called racist restrictions on voting are as follows. You can't have a polling station in a tent or a parking garage. So no pop-up polling stations.
So my grandmother can cancel her drive-by 40-ounce and weed drive-by polls. Next!
We are not going to buckle to the big lie in the state of Texas.
And what lie is that?
Well, in Texas, we had mail-in ballots for people 65 and older, those who are disabled, those who were unable to show up in person on Election Day.
Like the Democrat legislators of Texas couldn't show up to Congress to represent the people that voted them in.
We can't hold this tide back forever. We're buying some time. We need Congress and all of our federal leaders to use that time wisely.
Well, use your time wisely, because if your ass come back to Texas, your ass getting arrested and put back to work.
And when you request a ballot by mail, you have to write your signature and you have to write your ID that's on your license, or if you don't have a driver's license, the last four numbers of your social security number. Done. How's that restrictive?
Do black people have social security cards? I know we ain't got IDs. Next!
I'm not going to be a hostage.
What in the hell is gonna hold Medea hostage?
That my constituents' right to be stripped from them.
I don't know what the fuck you just said, Medea.
We have fought too long and too hard in this country
for black people to carry IDs.
We had a full 3 weeks of early voting in person.
They actually expand voting hours all across the board, and companies are required to allow workers to go leave work on Election Day and go vote.
And people were then able to vote on Election Day.
Or unless you were selling weed for my grandmother, your ass is on the clock. My grandmother don't give a damn if it was Jesus' birthday. Your ass ain't going if you on the clock.
Does that indicate to you that there was any systematic effort to deny minorities a opportunity to vote?
That's what fake news say.
Some of the things that are in Texas Bill 3, adding ID requirements for mail voting, banning drive-through early voting, banning overnight early voting, adding criminal penalties to certain election processes, and empowering partisan poll watchers.
Next! What's so racist about Texas voting bill? Texas voting bill is not racist, just like Georgia voting bill is not racist.
Tell me, you're against the Georgia bill, I gather. Is that right?
I'm against certain provisions of it, yes.
Okay, and I think you've called it a racist bill. Am I right?
I think there are provisions of it that are racist, yes.
Well, CNN don't.
Yes, poor black folks are going to get hit by this, but so are a lot of you. Poor is poor, my brother and sister. And these are not about color, these laws, just like Jim Crow. They weren't explicitly about color. They were color neutral.
So white people, Jim Crow 2.0 is coming for your ass next.
This vote, I'm ashamed to say, is further evidence that voter suppression has become part of the official platform of the Republican Party.
That means the Republican Party is officially racist.
Okay. Tell me specifically, just give me a list of the provisions that you objected.
Yeah, bitch. Please explain. You know what? Never mind. Next!
If a state decides to require a voter to prove who the voter says he is or she is, do you consider that racist?
I think that's more of a suitable question.
Not at all, sir. Voter identification has been a part of the American theory of democracy almost from the beginning.
You're okay with it?
I support voter identification, yes.
Okay.
All of a sudden. Next!
Do you think it was a smart thing for President Biden to do when he called everybody who supported the Georgia bill a racist?
Joe Biden doing something smart. Was that a trick question?
Sir, I'm both an attorney and a former legislator, and it is not simply the words that you're saying.
I'm an attorney and a current legislator, and I might
Yes,
want to
sir.
trade places with you. But keep going.
So both of y'all should plead the fifth when it comes to answering the question about Joe Biden doing something smart.
I think that this bill is grounded in racial animus. I think that the language that we are using to describe
Can I ask you
this
how
bill-
you know that, madam? I mean,
Because-
honest, that's an honest question. How do you know that?
Since you are a race explaining expert, how in the hell do you explain black people not having ID, Mrs. Race explaining race expert?
Why doesn't that hurt black people and white people and brown people?
It should hurt every race in the same predicament the same way. And last time I heard is way more broke white people than it is broke black people, because it's just way more white people, of course. It's double the numbers. Matter of fact, it's triple the numbers. Matter of fact, I think it's quadruple the numbers. For every black person in America, is 5 more white people.
But that's a long way from the president calling people a racist because they support a state.
Have you no shame?
Because we know Joe Biden don't. But what is not a shame is my baby mama is not going to see near dime of Susan Lawrence donation. Susan Lawrence, Joe Biden got a question for you.
Are you on the side of truth or lies? Fact or fiction? Justice or injustice? Democracy or autocracy? That's what it's coming down to.
No, it's coming down to bullshit, or as the Democrats call it, racism.
My point is that when your motivation is grounded in the race of those who are engaging in behaviors that you disagree with, that is racist.
So your black ass get to decide what's racist or not and who racist or not. And the only people that can make up the racist laws are the liberals. If the Republicans say something was racist, it'll be blasphemy.
You can't kick poll watchers out of polling stations. And the polling workers have to be able to see the counts. And if you're in a big city, they have to live stream the counting rooms.
So everybody can see. How racist is that?
Particularly when it is targeted at communities of color by people in power.
So a broke ass white person that live in the same neighborhood wouldn't have that problem.
Also, counties have to clean up these old, dusty voter rolls, and all votes have to have a paper trail, so they can't just disappear in a machine. And paying for votes becomes a felony. Democrats don't like that.
And they don't like paying for kids' sex either. But that's a different story for a different skit.
I just need to ask you, how do you know that's what they meant?
Because she is an expert language race expert.
Because we asked them not to do it because we showed them what the effect was, and they refused to answer, and they refused to abide.
Also add refuse to fucking believe.
I worked with these people for 11 years. I don't believe that every single person who supported this bill has deep racial animus in their hearts for all purposes.
I didn't say anyone who supports the bill is racist, but only racists support the bill.
It certainly is a return to a Jim Crow-like mentality.
And how is that? By not allowing people to cheat.
And the machines have to have software that aren't allowed to change votes, and officials can't just mail out ballots without having them requested, so no mass mailing of ballots and no ballot harvesting.
So how is that racist?
But for the purposes of voting rights, when racial animus is your predicate, then yes, you should be held accountable and those bills should be stopped.
And your ass should be held accountable for not telling the truth and shift blaming.
So what you're doing is a lie on top of a lie on top of another lie. It is no different than Jim Crow.
And if you said enough, it has to be true.
Tell me what the objection is to all of these things in the bill. What's the objection?
Well, it's because they seem to be looking for a problem.
No, but all of the things I just read that's actually in the bill, what is objectionable?
Not a motherfucking thing.
Another special shout out to James Touch It. Thank you for the donation yesterday. Chris, my boy who donated 2 times for yesterday and today's skit. Couldn't made it possible without you. My grandmother's favorite name, Julia Seawright, and Robert, good looking out on the Petey Green advice.